Welcome to Bell Brothers Brewing.
Engineers talking about beers.
I'm Curtis.
I'm Cody.
I'm Liz. So what are we doing today, guys?
Well, we're doing a clone.
A clone?
Making a clone.
Making clones. Ooh, science. Doing extra engineering today.
First, we're going to extract the DNAs, and then we're going to put it into the petri dish and the test tube.
Petri dish.
Oh no, what I was going to say is, yeah. And then when dinosaurs rise, dinosaur kills man and woman inherits the earth, right?
In this case, Bell Brothers is going to pick apart one of our favorite beers, and we're going to try to figure out how to brew a clone of the Sierra Nevada Pale Ale.
Ooh, this happens to be an exemplary example. Wow, I word all the goods. This happens to be one of the world-class examples of an 18B in the BJCP guidelines, Pale Ale. So that's why it's one of our favorites, right? Because it's pretty damn good.
Yep, it is one of the best. And I think, Cody, you were talking about how nice this will be coming into the springtime, kind of the right kind of beer for that. So we're going to take this apart. We're going to start at the top with aromas and appearances. Then we're going to walk our way into flavor and mouthfeel. And then overall, kind of what are those catch-all pieces that make this beer a beer.
But before all that, we need you to go to the YouTube and the Facebook, like, subscribe, smack that like button. Make sure you share it. Get everybody to this video so that they can know how to make some Sierra Nevada Pale Ale.
Damn right.
Let's get into it.
So we poured the beer. Now we're going to take, what are you guys smelling across the board? What's that first note?
Citrus.
Yep, lots of citrus.
It is very clearly citrus-based.
I think for the basics out there, what we're pointing out is that the hops are the primary scent that you're picking out of that, right? It's hop forward.
And it's an American citrus. It's not like a tropical citrus like with their Australian Pale Ale. This is just like your straight, Citra hop, essentially.
Yeah, Citra Cascade. It's got that little bit of piney and catty sort of smell to it.
I'd say I'm not really picking up any kind of resin. So if there's a pine, it's a secondary to it. I really think that citrus, orange, or grapefruit, light grapefruit, it's actually not as strong in the aromatics as I was hoping in the hop. It is not dominating. I'm actually picking up a little bready caramel from the
bready,
malts. There's a strong background to that.
Are you guys getting any yeast characteristics? Are there any esters or anything, or is that just a completely clean profile?
No,
I'm getting completely clean.
Super clean.
No real yeast notes at all.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
I'm not picking up anything on that one. So aromatically, we're talking just a little bit of citrus, very balanced, and that bready. I think it's more the important part is that you really can smell the bready, a little caramel, or sweetness,
light.
like a light, very lightness.
Is it a caramel or a malt sweetness?
I think it's malt sweetness, not caramel. I'm not really getting that toasty note of a caramel.
No.
I'm getting malt sweetness and bready.
Yeah, that bready's a good one to go. All right.
Note to the brewers. Malt sweetness.
Like a light gold. Yeah.
I mean, it's not dark gold. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's a pretty hefty. It's got some good yellows into it. I'm really happy with the amount of light that's coming out of that. Yeah, you think you need more lights than the premium grades that are sitting behind us?
Because they can't see the premium grades. I would say that's gold. That's not light. I mean,
it's not dark gold though.
We could go.
it's not dark gold.
We're
We all agree
from
gold.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Yellow hints to it. Crystal, brilliant clarity. Of course, it's commercial.
Yeah.
So
it's commercial. They filtered it.
Right.
It's clean.
Really nice white head, good retention. You know.
Nice and creamy, not too
There's
rocky.
definitely some proteins in here,
Yeah.
right? Because of the head retention and the kind of heft that brings to it. I think we're gonna have to really watch to make sure that we keep some proteins in there to keep this up there.
Yep. All right. Everybody's favorite part, you get to drink it.
Immediate hit of like that clean, bitter crispness to it, right? Just right in the front.
Yep.
It's almost, now take this with a grain of salt because I'm not a hophead. Like you get a little bit of that citrus that's on the nose, but to me this goes more pine on the flavor and it kind of sits on the back of the palate.
It's definitely on the back and the sides of the palate on the bitterness. I agree. I think it's more of a piney flavor.
Right, not resin. It's not like, it's not resinous, but I get more of the pine than the citrus.
It gives me a grapefruit rind
Yes,
sort of feel. It
okay.
tastes like eating the peel of a
So
grapefruit.
there's a little rindiness.
Yeah.
I still think there's pine.
There's a bit of pine. I think the
to
pine
it
helps
that
give you that grapefruit rind versus grapefruit flesh.
And because
Yes.
the flavor is not overpoweringly hoppy, right? Because it's not an IPA, you do pick up a little bit more of those caramel tone, or not the caramels.
Malt
You do pick
sweetness.
up a little bit more of that malt sweetness that helps
Yeah, a
balance
little
it
bit of
out.
bready.
Are you picking up any kind of real malt flavors out of this?
No, mostly
No.
a little bit of malt sweet, maybe bready, but it's
But
mostly
it's
just a light
so-
sweet. Yeah.
Like that piney grapefruit rind just dominates the flavor. I don't get any real esters.
But not in a bad way, though.
No, not in a bad way, but I'm saying that like it's kind of a one note beer to me, like, which is probably why it's commercially successful, right? This is not a
Right.
complex beer. This is an easy drinking. You go back every sip, you know what you're going to get. It's not something that you're going to find really intricate flavors in. So since Cody's got himself one sip left, you can't tell this is a favorite.
There's more in the glass over there. I think the important part of this mouthfeel is that there is like a slight carbonic bite to it.
Yes.
It does it foams the mouth, and so the carbonation needs to be a little higher. I'd say it's probably like medium to medium high.
Yes.
Yeah.
The other thing is it's incredibly clean. Like you take your sip, it's smooth. It's definitely a medium body. Like it's medium, almost heading toward light, but not quite light.
Oh.
I think that's a carbonation.
I was going to
think,
say,
yeah. So it's medium with a high carb to kind of give it that light feel. The other big one is just it's so clean. You take that sip, it sits on the palate for a second, and then gone, and you just have like a leftover hoppiness sort of floating around your mouth.
So there's not like any sort of cloyingness. It's not velvety. It's crisp and refreshing, which is what this style is supposed to be.
Yes. You also get a nice bubbliness. When you take that sip, it kind of bubbles a little bit right as it hits your tongue,
Yes.
and it gives it a nice foamy, not foamy. Not quite sure how to describe it exactly because it's not moussey or velvety like a
Right.
stout or something in nitro would
But
be.
it fills the mouth.
Creaminess, I believe, is in the mouthfeel, right? Is the amount of creaminess involved in that.
But this isn't creamy
It's not
to
really
me.
creamy. It's
The carbonic bite prevents this from
Fuzzy.
being creamy. Yeah, fuzzy
Fuzzy.
is kind of.
But
I think that just goes back to higher carb.
right, yeah, the higher carbonation on that one really pops out. I'm not picking up any kind of astringencies, either from the roast, the malts, or the hops at all,
No.
right? It's really well balanced across the board, well designed.
I mean, I would say obviously there's a reason this is considered a world-class example. Like, it's pretty damn flawless. I don't know. Like, obviously Cody's having problem keeping it in his glass. So
Well, I think the big things to note here are drinkability. Like that's what really makes this stand out. Is it's a very smooth, easy drinking,
yes.
and simplicity. I think those are the two core characteristics of this one: drinkability and simplicity. So now we can do the final category: vital statistics.
Which is not really normally like a judging thing that you do specifically, but it's important when you're trying to clone the recipe because it's going to help you hone in that ingredient list,
Yep.
Definitely.
And so first one that we know we can use is 5.6 ABV.
which helps the drinkability.
Yes. But it'll also help us know how much malt we're going to use, so we won't accidentally overshoot this. If I had to guess at SRM, I would go. Is that like 12? 5
Maybe
to 10.
5 to 10.
There you
And
go.
this looks closer to like the 5.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
it's probably
so
in the
close-
6, 7
5,
range.
6, 7 range.
Yeah. So the
Yeah.
SRM on this is 5, 6, 7. It's the 5.6 ABV. That puts us in a decent range of like lower grade.
Which is right in the middle of what it's supposed to be. IBUs 30 to 50.
I would say.
Probably in the lower 30, 35. It's not that
No.
bitter.
True. Yeah.
No, I don't think this is as low as a 30. From the bottle, you get that it's 5.6 ABV. Sierra Nevada's website says that this is a 38 IBU. Original gravity of 13.3
Play-Doh.
Play-Doh.
Plato and 2.8 final.
Okay. We can convert that later.
You can convert that later.
Okay, so I think the real key aspects of this, right, is that when we're looking at that grain bill, based on the fact that the ABV is so low at 5.6, right, and it's still balanced, we're still getting some of those flavors from that, that we really got to pay attention to pulling back on that grain bill. And because of the IBUs at that point, I don't think we're going to be hitting this with too many hops or too much as far as the hops go.
I agree with you there. I also think with the low final gravity. At 2.8 Plato, that's somewhere in the 1 point something, like 0.01 something.
Right.
Standard gravity. So it's not a really high final gravity, so our fermentability needs to be high as well.
Right.
When we're done here.
So the question is, obviously you guys are going to use a base malt like you always do. Are you going to add any specialty malts?
I'm thinking we got two-row.
Two-row brewers.
Basic two-row brewers, right? Clean, crisp, easy, straightforward. The problem is not a whole lot of color in that one.
No.
So do we want to bring in, there's got to be a little breadiness, toasty. We're thinking Vienna?
I don't know about Vienna. Maybe a Victory? No,
Victor. No,
it's
'cause that
something
was
in that
biscuity.
range though. I'm with you on
Yeah.
that there's something in that like 10 SR or 10 lava bond,
Right.
not caramel.
No.
There's something in that 10 lava bond
This
range
is-
that makes it work.
I think we need to bring in some Cara already just to give it some more head retention, some proteins on that.
Right. Well, don't forget it's supposed to be simple, so you don't want to get too crazy here. Like your basic two-row and then maybe one, or do you think you need two specialty malts?
I have to look at what the lava bond is of like a Cara foam or a Cara pills, because I think those are almost 10.
Right.
So that might be the thing we're looking for that
That's
little
all
bit of
they
color
add.
is just base malt, a little bit of Cara, and you're done.
So 20-minute gives you your flavor hop, right? That's just, so that gives you most of your flavors, and then your 10-minute is your aromas. And at 60 minutes, prior to that, is where your bitterness hops are. And I'm thinking we could probably use another ounce of Cascade at 60. The idea being is I'm trying to give a ballpark estimate of our numbers, right? The alpha acid that you want in the land for that 35 IBU is something in the what, 6-7% maybe.
If you're gonna
I
use
mean,
a whole ounce, if you get something like if you have like a bag of Citra floating around that's like a 12, you could probably use a half or a quarter of an ounce of a Citra.
you're not going to get any flavor or aroma from what you put in that 60 minutes. So it's more about getting the IBU, the balance of that bitterness into the beer initially before you walk into the rest of that.
Exactly. So then the last big ingredient that we're left with is yeast.
Do we even need to discuss this? It's
001. Why is it 001, Cody?
Because it's clean and you make IPAs with it.
It provides a crisp, clean finish. It doesn't add any kind of weird funkiness to it or yeast character.
Right.
It does exactly what you need to do for a clean American pale ale in the store.
The only way to get a cleaner fermentation is to make it a lager, but it says on the bottle it's an ale.
It ain't
so
lager.
Yep.
not lagering. We'll see you on the flip side when the boys have the beer.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us. All right, so right now what we've got is our hot liquor tank full of what? How much water did you put in here, Cody?
About 12 gallons.
12 gallons? We got 12 gallons of hot water with our immersion heater off and running. We're up to about 172 degrees, which is perfect mashing temperature. And next door to that is our insulated mash tun. This allows us to do some recirculation on our mash to help get that clarity, along with not having to do outside heating sources, which is really, really nice. First up in the mash, we're going to bring over our water, and on top of that, we're going to be doing some lactic acid in order to pH balance our mash water. Cody will talk some about what we're doing there and how much we're moving around. I think what's important here is that we're actually changing up a little bit of our process. Rather than adding our brewing salts into the mash, we're going to do that in the boil. There's some discussion and some research around that says that it might be, or that adding your salts during the mash is actually going to mess up your pH calculations, or your acidity, right, by being more basic. And so moving it into the boil still gets you all of those great flavors and the complexities you're looking for to really crisp up or amplify certain flavors or smells without screwing up your mash efficiency.
Done with mashing. We put in 5.2 grams of lactic acid because I got fairly basic water here. It likes lattes and shit. And After we were done with that, we then mashed in to 14 quarts of water and mashed in our 10.5 pounds of grain for our Sierra Nevada Pale Ale clone. Or possibly some sort of pale ale that tastes nothing like Sierra Nevada. We'll find out.
That's right. We will find out. Flow for what, a couple gallons, and then we'll start heat onto it. We'll be back in a couple minutes. So we've successfully brought over most of our water. All of our hot liquor tank is empty. Zeroed out the water there. We're still sparging off. We're almost there. About 7.5 gallons. We're gonna get to 8. Cody's gonna add our salts to it as necessary. Cody, what are we adding? We're adding gypsum, Epsom salts, and calcium chloride. So we're gonna stack that on there. He's gonna measure it out, and then we start the boil. That's gonna get ramped up to boil for like an hour because we gotta burn off a lot of the extra water. And then we'll be back for the hop schedule. It's hop time. So we boiled down to about 7 gallons. Yeah, about 7.5, between in there. And now we're gonna add 0.6 ounces of Idaho 7. Now, if you're asking, well, the recipe calls for 1.6 ounces of Cascade, and you're using 0.6 ounces of Idaho, what just happened? It turns out that, again, we've explained this before, check it out on other casts, but your hops for bittering, it's all about the alpha acid calculation. All of it's going to be turned into bittering units, bitterness for the beer itself, and so it really doesn't matter what hop you use for your bittering hop, because there should be no flavor or aroma if you allow it to boil for the full 60 minutes between when you put it in and when you start adding. It's time for the main hop of the evening. That's right. So now it's time to bring in that Cascade hop. We're gonna bring in that aroma. This is actually gonna be the flavoring hop at 20 minutes, ready to go. And you did have smell when we first put in that Idaho, but right now I tell you there is basically zero hop aroma out of this. In another 20 minutes, that Idaho is going to be long gone at this point. So we got half an ounce of Cascade that's about to go in.
And it's time!
It's time to taste the clone of the Sierra Nevada.
Yep. Well, first, we gotta taste Sierra Nevada again, so we can know what it tastes like.
Yep, because it has been a couple of weeks.
Yep.
Good, clean, bitter.
Yep.
Just, there's not a huge amount of notes. There's just enough malt to back it up. Real tasty and enjoyably fresh pale ale.
Mm-hmm. Now we have the clone. Yeah, as you can tell, it's so different.
Actually, I mean, honestly, if you look at it, right, like color-wise,
pretty close.
I'd actually say we're doing pretty good.
Yeah.
Cody likes sticking it in front of his face because he knows
Beer goes in the face. You make the beer gargles.
But I think honestly, I mean, color-wise, like,
Yeah.
I mean, it is pretty close. Yeah, there's some clarity problems.
We got a little
probably,
bit of haze,
a little
but
bit.
we didn't filter.
Yeah, exactly.
We're not a
Right.
production, shipping across country brewery, so we don't need to filter. So
You know what I want to do is smell.
That's a good point.
There's like a sweeter note. I
Yeah.
think it's a little sweeter. You can pick up a little bit more of the malt.
There's a bit more of a malt aroma
clone
from
on that
ours
one,
and a little less the hop.
right? So I think we probably could have used a little more hop aromas or aroma hops, right?
Yeah, a little more
Probably
aromatic.
more on that one. And obviously you can see that like carbonation's a little low, even though it's been sitting. So probably need to crank that up a bit more.
Yeah.
But color-wise, I think ingredient-wise, you're probably pretty close.
pretty
So I
close.
wouldn't touch the grain bill too much unless we
don't
taste
think so.
something weird,
Yeah.
right? Pretty close. It's got good bitterness to it. I still think it's maybe not finished all the way.
There's a note of almost fruitiness
Yeah.
in the middle. There's a hint of
that's
fruity.
it. Fruity.
That's
yeah.
not in the other one. The other one's really leaning on the piney, little bit of citrus.
Mm-hmm.
This has an almost
Yeah, fruity character to it,
Yeah.
like a grapefruit or
no. It's a different. It's more sweet fruit.
melon.
Melony. I think melon. There's a hint of a melonish note to me. Maybe
what-
like honeydew.
Yeah, honeydew, huh? And you think that came from like the hops we were utilizing in there?
I don't think so. I think the flavor is coming from the yeast. I think we got a little bit of an ester, a little bit of a fruity ester floating around in there.
Fruity esters from the yeast, huh? All right. I still think this is a decent pale ale. I mean, obviously you can taste some of the bitterness in there. There's good malt backbone to it. I think the fruit really throws off what I would consider the clone aspect of this piece of
The
it.
body's a little thick. I think it's
Yeah.
the other side. It's a little. It was one of the first things I noticed is it's not got that crispness
No, it does not.
that really makes the Sierra Nevada shine. So when you first take that sip of Sierra Nevada, it's it's light on the tongue. You get that bitter, and then it's gone.
And I think the higher carbonation of the Sierra Nevada helps. There's a little bit of that carbonic bite right off the top. This needs to get over-carbonated. I think needs to get brought up some more on that one. Really push the carbonation levels. That might lighten the body up a little bit too.
Yeah.
But I think that would bring out more of those esters. So you're going to bring out more of those aromatics that are going to bring in the melon. So I still think we're a little off on what we're doing there.
I think the bitterness is also a little low.
A little low.
Yeah. Our bitterness needs to come up.
Yeah.
Not aggressively, but it definitely needs to come up 5-10 points. So I think the malt profile is good. I think the yeast was good. We got to up our bittering hop a little, maybe up the aroma hop just a little bit,
Right.
and then really maybe kill the run the fermentation a little colder to really kind of make sure it gets that absolutely no esters at all fermentation profile.
Definitely.
I call it a 6.
Yeah, it's above average. It's 6. I don't like the melon piece. And the heavier body really kind of detracts.
It's not
what I
as
would think.
refreshing as you would really love. Like it doesn't fit that profile of being like a nice, easy, like warm summer day. Take a sip and like, man, that was. You don't sip it and go,
Yeah, exactly. And I want that from my pale ales, especially my American pale ales. So I don't think it really hits that beat. I think a 6 is acceptable. There's nothing flawed necessarily as far as tasting weird or bad, but it doesn't really meet the mark of what I would
doesn't
consider a good
sing.
beer. Yeah. In comparison to being a clone, 4.
Or yeah, it's
not-
got
it's
some
not there.
notes, but it's at least close enough that we can tweak and get into the line that we're looking for.
I think we can get there, but I don't think this, like if somebody said this is my Sierra Nevada clone and handed it to me, I'd be like, you're full of it. Yeah, that's not it.
You need to go back to the drawing board, which is
Right.
exactly what we said. This needs to go back to the drawing board a little bit. I think we have a good baseline.
Yeah.
We just got to tweak a few things, and then we'd have a working recipe, I think, for making a Sierra Nevada clone.
Agreed. Thanks for visiting us here at Bell Brothers Brewing.
Engineers talking about beers.
Cheers.